Hey fellow traders, it's Sunday, July 26th. This is my weekly prep video I'm looking for this week. I'm looking for some potential swing candidates to build a position in as we have a pretty important earnings week this week. I'm starting with a view of QQQ because of QQQ has one of the or it has the heaviest weighting in SPY, the S&P 500. I'm always trying to look at the larger trends of QQQ to ensure that I can time my entries so that we have bulls at our back, or if I'm shorting, if we're looking for areas of consolidation. Obviously, shorting QQQ or names within it, you need to be in very short time frames given this larger look that we've been experiencing since the COVID dump. I just drew this upper trend line just for sake of a guide. We can see here we're looking for consolidation with a weekly higher low. When we had the bear break last week of the initial week of consolidation, 250, 276. When that broke, we're looking for a weekly higher low. I have this 8 EMA, the 12 is the blue, the 26 is the red. If bulls are really strong, we're going to bounce off this area and look for the weekly higher high as we continue this weekly uptrend. This weekly trend line, I'd be interested in how we reacted if we bounced up to there. But on this consolidation, we could also see, if we see a bear break of last week, 251.32, still just looking for a weekly higher low. So we had less bear volume last week. We would like to see again a decreasing bear volume if we're going to see further consolidation and downside. So bulls are really not looking too bad at all on the larger time frame. On the shorter time frames, you look on dailies, you can see that bulls lost this daily uptrend when we had this break of 255.62. Now just again looking for the weekly higher low, but with a little bit more daily downtrend momentum. Looking on the 4 hour, we see this pretty steep sell-off, very weak bounce. Bulls need to hold this low of 251.32, the low of last week, if we want to, and see a break higher if we want to see that weekly uptrend continue. Otherwise, if this is a weekly or a 4 hour bear flag and we see a break of that low, still just looking for a weekly higher low. So what I'm watching is if we see a break of that low, I'm targeting the 250 or 245 area. The reason is the pivots. If we throw the pivots on, we can go to the monthly pivot time frame on the daily time. We look at this. So we have the DM pivot is at 245.43, and then the standard pivot is at 243.49. I like those areas as support levels. Those are going to be key areas to hold for the pivot for the month. If you look at the 4 hour, you have a bit of I forget the word for it, but multiple different support levels that are lining up. Because you also have the S1 for last week. That's going to be around that area. Below that is the S2 for the standard pivots from last week, as well as this 200 moving average that price is going to meet at. So if we see a bear break of again of 251.32, I'd anticipate those levels to react as an initial point of support. If we bounce strongly weekly or just rip through it lower, that would give us a bit more information of what we can anticipate for potential further movement in QQQ. So given that we're looking for a weekly higher low, and we have these potential levels that I just pointed out that we could look for a weekly higher low, I'm looking for strong names that would get extra support from a bull momentum and push behind them if we see a bounce in QQQ and an overall bounce in the market. So the first name I have is Walmart. So this I think is, other than PENN, Walmart and PENN I think are the only, by the looks of it, are the only two non-tech names with the names that I'm looking at for a swing trade entry. We had this weekly inside bar last week as it stayed within the high and low of the week prior. We saw a nice low volume, even though we saw a pullback in the tech sector and the general market at large. What we saw was this nice bounce, which I played with some common shares for the majority of this bounce. We saw consolidation initially with this low was set at 131.14. The high was 134.13. We saw a lack of ability to break that high, the 134.13 resistance point, and then a bear break of that level on Friday. What I want to point out is this is my watch list. Come on, computer. There you go. This is my watch list of a bunch of different names I watch and some different tags. that I put towards them. The colors mean different things. You can see that we had a very small move on Walmart relative to some of the more aggressive sell-offs. And this was also reflected the day prior when we had this daily inside bar on Thursday, when the rest of the market saw really a more aggressive selling off. So Walmart's holding up very well. We have earnings approaching, but it's not for another couple weeks, so I like that. And if we do see any consolidation, we're just looking for that weekly higher low that I showed in that prior chart. So the same rule applies as with QQQ. Because we're looking for a weekly higher low, we're looking for a 4-hour trend change. 4-hour oversold would be a good level to start scaling in. I'm going to set some alerts for that. I'm liking the constructive look of this move already. It's looking a bit bull flaggy because when we saw the break of that, it was 131 and change level last week. Bear saw no follow through. We went into initial bounce, potential bear flag, and if we see bulls are able to hold that level, 130.40, which I believe might have been a pre-market low. Bulls are looking completely fine to have a quick 4-hour chin change and see a bigger move on the weekly into blue sky breakout. Otherwise, I'm looking to scale in entries as we get into 4-hour oversold territory, considering we are just looking for that weekly higher low, and because of there's some fundamental storylines behind Walmart with the Walmart Plus. Because Amazon is so aggressive, I'm anticipating some retail volume and buying pressure to come into Walmart to support it on any pullback. So I'm looking for evidence on the chart to support that thesis. Tesla is probably my favorite and most consistent day trading vehicle. May also be interested in a potential swing entry in my TFSA. We had earnings last week, looking for a weekly higher low, similar look to QQQ. Haven't seen very much pullback so far. We had decreasing bear volume last week compared to the week prior. We're just looking for a weekly higher low. Ideally, we see a bit more pullback, and I'm always in favor of oversold entries if we're looking for a swing. When looking at the 4-hour, we saw that slight bounce on QQQ. Tesla didn't see it at all. This is pretty much a straight sell-off, no bounce, because you see consecutive lower highs on each 4-hour candle. If we see a bear break of 1366.54, we'd be approaching 4-hour oversold levels, so you could start to scale in positions for a longer entry. We could also look at playing some calls, some longer expiry out calls to swing, because we see this 4-hour steep sell-off. We would anticipate at some point a low and a 4-hour trend change to need to occur in order to set that weekly higher low. I'm liking anywhere between these EMAs. I'm liking 4-hour oversold levels. Those are all different zones that I'd be looking for a potential swing entry. But Tesla's looking good overall. Netflix, also looking for a weekly higher low. You can see we touched this 8 EMA last week. Really low volume, notably lower volume on the weekly time frame. I've already in one long position on Netflix. I bought it either pre-market or just into cash open Friday morning. I got around 471 was my entry. We saw a rejection from this EMA pack. Netflix was one of the best performing bounces in the tech sector initially on Friday, and then we saw this pullback into the end of day. We see decreasing bear volume, notably. I should point out that this is obviously after hours, so that's less significant. Bulls are going to want to hold 467.54 and eventually break this 487.17 to see that weekly higher low potentially being set as we form this base of support. If we do see a bear break and into 4-hour oversold conditions, I will be looking to add in another 2 entries, probably down into the 450s, 440s. On the weekly time frame, that would line up nicely with these EMAs, the base of support of these EMAs. Bulls need to hold 432.14 for that weekly higher low. Otherwise, we would lose the weekly uptrend. So I'm not too concerned about the look of this chart overall as a bull and looking to get into a long position. It should be noted that I will probably not be looking to hold too long on this position. Because of my swing strategy, I usually look to hold for only a couple of days, maybe a week or 2 at most. So what I'll be anticipating is a weekly lower high to be set under this 575.37. Thus, I'll be selling into any bull follow through as we get a bounce. If we were to see a quick bounce on on Monday or Tuesday with no lower low in prices, I would not add on consolidation, obviously, on those bigger time frames, the 4 hour and daily, because we wouldn't see them. Instead, what I would look for is for trend changes to add to small and then selling into any bounce. So you can look like on 15-minute or hourly time frames to look for trend changes to indicate that bulls are stronger at this point, and we won't see any further downside, at least initially. PENN. PENN, we're not looking for a weekly higher low yet. I just thought this the monthly bull flag is an interesting look. We saw a bear break of 27.52. I think it was last week or the week prior. We saw zero follow through. So initial bounce, pretty much an immediate bounce, right to set this high of the 36.77 points. We're anticipating a potential lower high under this level. Let's mark that out, under the 37.43 level. So if bulls are unable to break that level, then we'd anticipate a weekly higher low over the maybe around this 27.52 level, or in terms of the weekly time frame, the 26.96. Nonetheless, there's a base of support around here that we could potentially look to get long off of. See this weekly volume that's really decreasing as we're approaching earnings, first week of August. So we have a bit of time to play this. It's also another good day trading vehicle because of the pretty wild volatility that we see intraday. So in any consolidation, I'll be looking to potentially get long, though considering that we have earnings approaching in the not too distant future. ZM, Zoom video. So all of these COVID style names, so like DOCU, Zoom, Microsoft, suppose PENN to a smaller degree, Netflix. As we see a second wave of come through with COVID, I anticipate these names to do well. Thinking that retail would continue to assume that we would see bullish volume and momentum into these names. Not to say that that's gonna cause higher highs, but just that I think they're gonna be in play names and that they're gonna be in news cycles. So I'd expect some volatility around them. We can see here the volume has been really decreasing, as we can see at the upper bound range of this bounce on the weekly. Now losing the daily uptrend. Actually, it looks like we lost that quite a while ago. Let's go back to the weekly for a second here. Yeah, just looking for a weekly higher low. Kiss the 8 EMA, looking at potentially downside to the 12 EMA. If we see further downside, let me look at the 4 hour. 4 hours a bit choppy, but what we're seeing is a bit of a descending wedge type look, meaning bears aren't getting much follow through. If we throw this up, that's not right. Yeah, I might not actually like this. Might scrap this idea. This is getting wild here. Yeah, this is a bit rough, but it gives you the general idea. Bears aren't getting much follow through on this 4 hour on pullback. So if we see break to lower low, we may be looking for a potential bounce play. The RSI is also looking for a descending wedge. That's an interesting look. What that's showing is just that the bears aren't getting much follow through on consolidation. So we can be looking for potential bull entries on this weekly higher low as we're seeing pullback. Why I like these names too is because a lot of them are either in blue sky breakout or very close to blue sky breakout. So if we can break the most recent highs, even if we have some weekly consolidation and a bit of an equilibrium form over the next month or so, I would anticipate another further bull push. Otherwise, again, we're just looking for weekly, monthly higher lows on a lot of these names. Totally fine. Microsoft, similar. So these names are not, I think NVIDIA and INMD may have earnings this week. All of these names benefit from already having earnings or from having earnings other than next week. So it gives me potential to formulate a bull entry plan. Microsoft is just looking for a weekly higher low. We saw a little bit more notable bear volume, probably because of earnings. So we just saw a lot of reactions around it compared to some of the other names, which had mostly decreasing bear volume from the weeks prior, which were good for the bullish case. Nonetheless, here we're just looking for a weekly higher low. Kiss the 8 EMA, looking around the 12 on the daily. Let's see what we get. Daily, these are around earnings. This is the volume the day after earnings reaction, so it's not surprising that we see this increased weekly volume. Daily, we're seeing something very similar where we lost this daily uptrend, confirmed it with a break of these levels, these daily support levels of 202.03 and 201.39. Not seeing a ton of follow through immediately, as we saw a bit of a bull push from that low on Friday. That was with the bounce of the QQQ sector. This is similar to some of the other names. I'm noting a bit of a common trend, obviously because they're in tech. When we had this flush in a 4 hour, I don't believe 4 hour was oversold at this point. Set this little high, now looking to hold that base of support, that smaller time frame base of support, 202.86. If bulls are able to and quickly change this 4 hour trend, then looking for that weekly higher low to be set. Otherwise, if we see further downside, I'm likely going to be looking for an entry for long to set that weekly higher low. Because of the size of this pullback, this is similar to, it was Netflix, yeah, similar to Netflix, where we anticipate a weekly lower high under the high of the bounce, 216.38. So you can play this two ways. You could either sell partial into the bounce and be willing to sit through daily and weekly consolidation to set a weekly higher low before eventually or potentially breaking that high of the bounce. Or you could just look to sell the entire position, look at consolidation, look how aggressive and much follow through bears are getting, and then look to get long again off of the potential base of support, which may at that point be the 197.51 level. If we see further downside for the bears, still just looking for a weekly higher low. Key low of support is this 193.55 level that bulls want to hold on consolidation, which you can see lines up with the 12 EMA. You're also going to have, I believe, the daily 200. No? What did I see? 4 hour 200. Aha, there you go. So I would anticipate this to be an initial base of support. If we see that bear follow through below this 197.51, I'd be very interested to see the reaction around this level. If again, this is very similar where I wouldn't necessarily get long off that level. You may be able to, but otherwise you're just looking for a potential shelf of support. If bears rip through it, if we get a weak bounce, if we get a strong bounce, that's just further information to add to some of the observations that we're making. So NVIDIA looks like still have earnings out. First week of August, we're going to have a couple different names that report then. It's very similar to the trend that we're looking for in other names. We're looking for a weekly higher low. We see this lower tail of buying. We see decreased bear volume. Bears are not getting much follow through. Let's look at the daily. Similar. Lost daily uptrend, started to confirm that daily downtrend as we broke 391.42 and this base of support, the 395.82 last week. What did we see? We saw a bounce on increasing bear bull volume. Again, so this is one of the strongest bouncers of some of the tech names I've looked at within QQQ. Big volume, as we saw that opening drive bounce on Friday, then setting a top and now consolidating. Interested to see if bulls can hold this level, 391.08. If not, again, I'd be looking around this 200 simple moving average for a potential area of support. That's going to line up probably with this 12 EMA. But because of the decreased bear volume, because of the lower wick of buying pressure that we're seeing on the weekly time frame, I'm looking for a potential long entry, being cautious of the upcoming earnings that's coming up. Last but not least, we have DOCU. I got INMD up here, but it's the wrong chart. DOCU. Okay, so DOCU, similar to other names, we're looking for a potential break back into all-time high. We're seeing this initial consolidation on the weekly time frame, looking for a weekly higher low, decreasing bear volume on the weekly inside bar, holding above the key EMAs. These are all themes that we're seeing in a number of different tech names. DOCU. So I played this initial bounce and sold into, I didn't nail this top by any means. I think I was actually stopped out in the 198.54 break after selling partial over 200, but nonetheless got the meat of that move. Now just looking for a daily higher low above this key support here. So the key support is 186.20. We saw a low of day Friday, 186.77. Missed that entry off that support, but nonetheless looking for a potential entry with a smaller time frame trend change on Monday to hold that level. If we see a bear break below that level and the low of last week, again, just looking for a weekly higher low for potential bull entry. We have this base of support, 180-150 potentially play off of, and then if we bear break that, just looking at the 4 hour for But 4-hour oversold would be a good entry level. You can see I have an alert set on this one. If we do see a bear break below this level, we could anticipate that we would get to oversold levels. I also have this handy tool here. I'm looking at RSI. It's an RSI projection tool, so it will project the hourly oversold or any time frame oversold or overbought levels. I have them set up for oversold. The first line is 30, then 28, 26, 24, 22, 20 on the RSI level down here. So if we see that bear break below the 186.20, I would look to get long off of a potential scaled entries within this. You could look for two levels, 4-hour oversold up to 28, the 26, 24, and then throwing down at the 20. And then if we see a bear break below 160, that's where you'd stop out, because that's quite a big move in terms of percentage and dollar value. You'd want to size your positions based off of that and scale them accordingly to make sure that your risk is accurately controlled. So one last thing is, because all of these names are going to have a significant amount of correlation, that the majority of them will be heavily impacted by QQQ. Just want to be cautious with the amount of weight that you put into each of them individually and as a group. Of course, because they're going to have a huge amount of correlation between them, as I mentioned earlier. You just want to be cautious with being oversized into only tech, depending on your time frame and investment approach and goals. So with that in mind, that's all I have for this week. I hope to make another video potentially highlighting some of the names that are going to be key to the QQQ sector this week, those that have earnings later this week. I think there's a bunch that report on Friday. Shop is one of them off the top of my head, but I may look into those if I think another video is warranted. Thanks so much. Have a good rest of your week, and don't forget to share the video with anyone that you may value from it. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And other than that, take care, guys. See you later.